In a bold and unapologetic stand against the entrenched injustices of the global system, African leaders are awakening to the clarion call of Burkina Faso's revolutionary leader, Captain Ibrahim Traoré. From the dusty streets of Ouagadougou to the bustling cities of Lusaka, a seismic shift is underway, a movement rooted in the unyielding demand for justice, dignity, and self-reliance. African nations are no longer content to be pawns in a world order that exploits their people and plunders their resources. Leading this charge is Zambia's President Hakainde Hichilema, whose recent shocking demand for the European Union, EU, and the United Kingdom, UK, to refund African nations for non-refunded visa application fees has sent ripples across the continent and beyond. This is not just a policy stance. It is a declaration of war against exploitative practices that have long bled Africa dry. President Hichilema's bold declaration has laid bare a scandal that has long festered in the shadows of global bureaucracy.
Okay, let's unpack this. We're diving deep today into a really compelling shift happening across the African continent. It's, well, a series of pretty bold moves by some leaders who are actively challenging the established global system and making a very strong push for self-reliance.
Absolutely. And the material we've been looking at, it offers some sharp insights into the specific actions driving this change. And it really paints a picture of the vision behind it all. It's not just abstract thinking. There are concrete examples, things actually happening.
Right. And that's our mission for this deep dive, isn't it? To pull out those key demands, understand this powerful vision for a self-reliant Africa that seems to be emerging, and look closely at the specific examples that really bring this whole movement to life. There's some truly eye-opening
applications is a direct challenge to a global order that has profited from Africa's marginalization for far too long. This is not just about money, it is about justice, dignity, and the right of Africans to be treated as equals on the world stage. Imagine what $70 million could do for Africa. Picture schools rising in rural villages, hospitals equipped with state-of-the-art facilities, roads connecting communities, and industries buzzing with local talent. Imagine an Africa where leaders reject the beggar's mentality, where they stop chasing foreign aid at endless summits.
So where should we start? Maybe with something that recently made headlines? It highlights a fundamental point of friction. Zambia's President Hakainde Hichilema, he recently put a very direct demand on the table.
Yeah, I saw that. He wants refunds, right? From the EU and the UK for visa application fees that weren't returned when visas were, well, rejected.
Exactly. And when you look at the numbers involved, it's pretty staggering. African countries collectively faced massive financial losses just last year because of these non-refunded fees.
How much are we talking?
Well, the figures mentioned are around $60 million lost just on non-refunded Schengen visa fees. And then another chunk, about $59 million, vanished via the UK's system.
Wow.
So you add it up, and it's a collective drain of over $67.5 million, just gone.
That is a huge amount of money leaving the continent for nothing, essentially. And tied to this are the incredibly high rejection rates you mentioned.
Oh, yeah. For Schengen visas alone, the rates hit astonishing levels, sometimes 40% to 50%, especially in countries like Ghana, Senegal, and Nigeria.
40 to 50%. Just imagine that. That represents the hopes, the aspirations, and often the hard-earned savings of a massive number of African citizens applying, only to have their applications denied and, crucially, their money kept. As President Hichilema put it, it is unacceptable that our citizens lose significant sums of money on unsuccessful applications.
Precisely. And that demand, it really goes far beyond just a financial calculation. It's a powerful statement about justice, about dignity, and about the fundamental right of Africans to be treated with respect as equals when they engage with the rest of the world.
Absolutely. And you can't help but think about what that lost money could actually fund if it stayed in Africa, if it was invested domestically. Picture it. New schools being built, hospitals getting vital equipment, roads connecting communities, industries maybe blossoming with local entrepreneurs and skilled labor.
It underscores a central theme that seems to be emerging from this movement, a rejection of what's sometimes called a beggar's mentality. It's like moving away from dependency on foreign aid and instead focusing inward on Africa's own resources and potential. The visa fee issue is really just one stark symptom, maybe, of a wider imbalanced global system.
That visa fee problem is, yeah, a perfect entry point into the bigger picture. Now let's shift focus a bit to another figure who really seems to exemplify this push for self-reliance, Captain Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso. He's being highlighted as, well, a revolutionary leader whose actions might be inspiring this shift across the continent.
Traoré's core message is incredibly clear, very direct. Africa's talent needs to stay in Africa. That's the gist. He's tackling the brain drain problem head on.
Right. And he points specifically to how talented Africans are often drawn away, doesn't he, by scholarships, mentioning places like Israel, Germany, Saudi Arabia. The issue isn't the scholarships themselves, I suppose, but the pattern where these highly skilled people often just don't return home to contribute.
He's very blunt about it. His view is, and this is a powerful quote from the material, the imperialist has always drawn several talents from here through scholarships, and they never return home. I do not want this brain to end up abroad and not serve the country. It's a direct challenge to a dynamic that's been going on for a long time, draining Africa of some of its brightest minds.
So what does this look like on the ground in Burkina Faso? How is he actually implementing this vision?
His approach is presented as very practical, action-oriented. He's focused on creating thousands of jobs within the country and actively transforming key sectors by empowering young, dynamic Burkinabe talent.
Okay, can you give some concrete examples of that? Like what specific industries or projects are we talking about?
Certainly. There are initiatives like setting up textile factories, producing high-quality, made in Burkina Faso goods. That's one. Then there's a significant focus on agriculture, not just for food security, but empowering farmers to produce surplus for export. Things like millet, sorghum, cotton, and major infrastructure projects building roads. Public buildings are being deliberately led and executed by local engineers and laborers.
That's powerful, really demonstrating trust in and the capability of local talent for these big projects. And he's backing this up how? Is there investment?
Yeah, by investing heavily in local institutions, providing better pay, better training, real opportunities to encourage talent to stay and build domestically.
So it's a fundamental belief that Africa's strength is its people, its own resources, not relying on external aid or expertise.
Exactly. And this also extends to a pretty strong critique he has for some other African leaders.
Yes, he doesn't hold back there, does he? There's that clear warning from him, stop being puppets for foreign countries.
And he calls out what he sees as backward thinking, that sort of lingering assumption that Africans can't match or surpass the West, which leads to practices like signing these overly expensive contracts with foreign firms. He even specifically mentioned Chinese companies, while local, capable talent gets overlooked.
But he's actively demonstrating the opposite, right? With that highway example. The new highway connecting Ouagadougou to Bobo Dioulasso, built entirely by Burkinabe engineers and teams.
That's the one. And the really significant detail here is that they did it at half the price quoted by foreign contractors.
Half the price. That's a clear, tangible proof point, isn't it? Local capability, cost effectiveness.
It completely validates his belief in African talent. And this focus on building from within, it includes education reform too. Establishing technical schools, universities, redirecting scholarships to be used locally, ensuring that African talent invest their skills right there in their own continent. As he says, we have engineers who can design bridges, architects who can plan cities, and workers who can make it happen. All we need is the will to trust in ourselves.
And that other quote that really drives it home. We have doctors who can save lives, scientists who can innovate, and entrepreneurs who can create wealth. Why do we keep looking to the West when we have everything we need right here? It's a powerful call for, well, internal confidence.
And this drive for self-reliance, it's also deeply rooted in the difficult realities many Africans face when they do go abroad. The mistreatment experienced by Africans outside the continent is highlighted as a really significant factor pushing this movement.
Yeah, it's a harsh picture painted in the sources. You see examples like grueling conditions, low wages, abuse for African workers in Gulf countries, or the systemic racism, discriminatory hiring, being stuck in menial jobs despite high qualifications in Europe. The material mentioned a specific case, a Nigerian nurse facing this, and then detention, deportation in places like Israel.
Right. These aren't just isolated stories. They point to a common, painful reality for many. And Traoré speaks directly to the ultimate tragic consequence of this Africans risking their lives crossing the Mediterranean. Many dying, their bodies washing ashore, all chasing a future abroad that often turns out to be a mirage, as he puts it.
It's truly heartbreaking to think about. As Traoré says, people of Africa cross the sea and others even die going to look for a better future in the West. And he links this directly back to what he sees as the failure of African leaders to invest in Africa's own potential, adding that poignant line, "If our leaders could only wake up, this could not have happened."
And this message, it seems to resonate strongly, especially with African youth. They see leaders like Traoré as embodying good governance, inspiring these movements like TRA talks and Stay Home Bill Africa. There's a real energy there.
Yeah, you start to see how these seemingly separate issues, like the visa fee scandal we talked about, and the problem of brain drain, how they connect. They're presented as symptoms of a deeper systemic challenge, a global system that perhaps unintentionally benefits from Africa's marginalization, from its talent and resources flowing outward rather than building capacity within.
Exactly, which leads us to the really powerful vision that emerges from all this material, the idea of a united Africa.
Okay, so what does that concept look like in the context of this movement?
It's a vision of shedding those external shackles of exploitation, fully embracing the continent's immense, often untapped potential, and transforming Africa from a continent often viewed, maybe unfairly, as a beggar into a genuine global powerhouse.
That's a big vision. It requires more than just ideals, though. It needs practical mechanisms, right? What does that involve?
Well, a key element discussed is intra-African mobility and collaboration. Imagine, engineers from Burkina Faso working on projects in Kenya, doctors from South Africa strengthening healthcare in Mali, tech entrepreneurs from Senegal launching startups in Tanzania, maybe Dar es Salaam. Allowing the free movement and leveraging of human capital across the continent could unlock massive job creation and innovation.
And thinking back to the finances, that $70 million lost on Schengen visa rejections, the, 44 million drained by UK fees, that's money that could be redirected within Africa.
Precisely. That collective fund could fuel regional infrastructure initiatives, Pan-African vocational training programs. It could boost cross-border trade networks or establish these Pan-African universities that attract and retain top talent. The money stays and builds within Africa.
And a united Africa would also fundamentally change the power dynamic on the global stage, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. With a united front, Africa could negotiate as an equal, not as individual nations, but as a bloc, leveraging its collective resources, its vast reserves of gold, diamonds, cobalts, rare earth minerals, and the sheer demographic weight of its 1.44 billion people. It could command respect and demand fair partnerships rather than, constantly seeking aid or external validation.
And Traoré's actions in Burkina Faso, as you described, they serve as a kind of proof that this vision isn't just theoretical, it's achievable, even on a smaller scale.
Right. Scaling that up across the continent could fundamentally change the trajectory. Meaning, young Africans might no longer feel compelled to risk their lives seeking opportunities abroad, but could find prosperity, purpose, and contribute right there at home.
It's a truly compelling idea. A future where Africa's talent, its resources, are harnessed within the continent for the benefit of its own people, and its voice is heard, respected globally. So looking at the demands made by leaders like President Hichilema on visa fees, and the concrete steps taken by Captain Traoré to build self-reliance from within Burkina Faso, it really does seem to signal a potential turning point, a rejection of the status quo, and a determined push for Africa to seize its own destiny through, unity and building from within.
Yeah, the insight from the material is pretty clear on that. The resources, the talent, the vision, it's all already within Africa. It's about the will, perhaps, and the leadership to activate that immense potential.
It really makes you consider the implications, doesn't it? This rising movement for self-reliance and unity in Africa. What does it mean for the continent's future relationships with the rest of the world? And how might it fundamentally reshape the dynamics of global power? That's definitely something to think about.